who did this? And why every time when we're looking for more detail, it's never have any name show up?
There's many more drugs where the drugs that are seized come from.
I think recently Thai and Australian people have been watching the same news about drug trafficking issue across many media platforms. And I think we both have the same question, is who did this? And why every time when we're looking for more detail, it's never have any name show up or came out. So could you tell me what the process is this?
Well, we have very, very good cooperation with Thai drug enforcement authorities. We've had the Australian Federal Police stationed in Thailand now for 42 years, since 1979. And they work very closely with the Thai police on information exchanges and on operations to seize drugs, to stop the people transporting drugs. And so that's now formalised under a working arrangement called Operation Storm. Just over the last 5 or 6 years since Operation Storm was established in 2016, there's been 25 arrests of very important crime figures, some in Australia, some in Thailand, because of the cooperation between our different police agencies. And they've seized almost 10 tonnes of drugs and drug precursors. So that's the police, very strong cooperation. And then, of course, our Border Protection Force, Border Force, is actually working with Thai border authorities as well, working with Customs and the Narcotics Control Board and the Office of Maritime Enforcement Centre. And so they basically are about exchanging intelligence, working together on techniques and on different cases. And so the reason why you don't get many names is perhaps you need to make sure that you don't prejudice a drug trial. So they give the information about the drug seizures, but not necessarily the names of those who are involved.
They know the information already, but they didn't share yet, right? Am I right?
Look, I think that's probably to a large extent true. They didn't share it with the public, but they shared it with each other, with the Thai authorities. And I think this is a necessary policing technique. So we work very closely together, and we're quite successful at disrupting drug trade. But there's many more drugs where the drugs that are seized come from. And so I think it's just the truth that a lot of drug precursors, a lot of meth coming through the sort of what used to be thought of as the Golden Triangle, down through Thailand into Australia, because Australia is a lucrative market. So if Thailand is part of the supply, in the supply route, and we're the market, then it makes a lot of sense to cooperate together, and we do very well.
What can Thailand and Australia do together to address this issue?
In some ways, we are a model for constructive cooperation. We work well together, and we enjoy working together and very effectively. But I just think that there is so much money involved in the drug trade that it's like trying to push that big boulder uphill and it rolls down again. I guess we also have to look at drugs as being a public health issue, but at the moment the cooperation is very good. There's nothing that we want from the Thai side that we feel like we're not getting. So it's a very cooperative relationship.
So as an ambassador, what would you want to say or leave the message from the Thai government about drug trafficking issue?
Oh, well, my message would be to say thank you to the Thai government, because our cooperation is so good with the AFP, the Australian Federal Police, here for now 42 years, and that cooperation working very well and very closely. So I think we're a model in some ways for a way to cooperate very closely. We're not a superpower, but we have a solid team here, I think of about 4 Australians who are full-time on these issues. And so my message to the Thai government is please keep on renewing our cooperation agreement. I have no doubt that will happen, and let's keep on working on this issue. It's so important to both of our countries.
How was the drug situation in Australia right now?
It's not great, as I say. It's especially during times of economic disruption. I think that drugs are more likely to be widespread. But I think we have to treat it as a public health issue there. We have to stop people from wanting to take drugs and agreeing to take drugs. So the situation is it's a constant struggle to seize the drugs before they get to Australia, before they get onto the market, and at the same time to look after the health of people who would take drugs or are taking drugs.
So about drug issue, how is it possible that Thai tourists will be more strictly observed from Australian government?
Look, I don't think there will always be strict controls on people coming across Australia's borders, whichever country they come from. But there is no particular extra scrutiny of Thai people at this time. Every person coming into Australia every person who is not an Australian or doesn't hold a permanent residency must pass a character test, making sure, for example, that they don't have a major criminal conviction. So that's a basic test that Thai people or any people will have to pass. But essentially, we look forward to getting our Thai visitors back to Australia, whether they are students or business people. At the moment, I think it's more the case that we're looking to the future and saying we want Thai people to be coming back into Australia. We want our country to be open again, and we want our Australian people to be able to get into Thailand as well, rather than let's have extra scrutiny on Thai people. I don't think that is the case.
For Australian people who came to Thailand for visiting, for tourists, what is the most complaint here for Australian people?
That's a very interesting story that relates to COVID. We would normally in any 1 year have something like 800,000 Australians visit Thailand. This is our busiest post for consular support across the whole globe. And so a lot of Australians coming. Now, with those people not coming anymore, the numbers of Australians in Thailand has fallen from, there was maybe 40,000 more or less semi-permanently or permanently in Thailand before COVID. That number's now dropped down to about 20,000 or 15,000. They are still concentrated in Bangkok, of course, Pattaya, Phuket, Chiang Mai. Now, really, when people have been desperate to come back from a lot of countries, we haven't had that many complaints from the Australians who have been left in Thailand. And I think there's a few reasons for that. Number one, for a very long time, the figures for domestic transmission in Thailand were so low, and so people felt safe here. Also, if you had to get stuck in a country and couldn't get home, Thailand's the best place in the world to get stuck.
I'm totally agree.
So there wasn't too many people complaining. So if there was a complaint, and it's not really a complaint, it's really the difficulties about getting visas rolled over or extended. That's not much of a complaint, really. So I think that the Australians in Thailand are pretty happy.
How was your 2 years here? What is your most favorite about Thailand?
Well, I've been unlucky with COVID because it's very hard to travel anywhere, but I've been to, I was here as a very, very young student in about 1985. And so at that time I loved going to the north, places like Chiang Mai and Chiang Rai, Chiang San, Mae Hong Son, places like that. On this occasion we managed to go to Chiang Mai again, and that's been fantastic. I enjoy looking at the temples and the architecture and the Lana sort of history. So that's been the most interesting thing. And also, of course, the southern beaches. We haven't had much of an opportunity to go there because of COVID restrictions, but went to Phuket and went to some of the beaches there, and they were just lovely. So both of those things, I think. And Bangkok, there's a million things to do if you can get out. So saying the pandemic's over, I'd like to get out of Bangkok and see different parts of Thailand that I haven't been to see yet, and some that I have been to see. I'd like to go back to Chiang Mai. We have an honorary consul there, and I'd like to go down to Phuket where we have quite a sizable community. We have a consul general there, and I really should go to each of those places every 6 months. But maybe once in 2 years is all I've been able to do. And then I'd like to go up into Isan, Khon Kaen and Korat and places like that where I haven't been yet. So there's many things that I have to do. We've got an agenda of trade and economic diplomacy that we're engaging the Thai government on, and I'd like to really push that forward. We've signed a strategic partnership agreement with Thailand. Our two Prime Ministers did that over a Zoom connection just before New Year, and so we really want to put some flesh onto that sort of shape so that we can start to take the relationship forward. So there's lots of things to do, and some of them are still waiting a little bit for post-COVID times, but one of the best things I think is to get out of Thailand, get out of Bangkok and see more of Thailand.
COVID is just one hiccup. If we can stop the next one. Yeah? We know how to create jobs and we know how to bring in money into the systems. So people talk about disruption a lot. Yeah? I don't.